Hello, everybody. How are you? My goal with this video is to answer some common questions around the accounting and tax field and help you break down that barrier between your business, accounting, and tax and give you some insight and answers and direction. I'm Margot Master, your Heartfelt CFO, and I have founded Heartfelt CFO and Tax Services around, I think it's about 5 years ago now. We used to be called Margot's Bookkeeping, and at that point we were doing just bookkeeping. And now what we do is more full service, which is bookkeeping, accounting, and tax services. Now, we specialize in the real estate services field, so for professional service-based business owners. However, my company has met in a different category to basically meet business and tax to make it together and integrate in our processes. But the goal of this video is to help you to see the direction for your business of what's going to help you and give you some answers and insight and also some things to think about. So the first common question is, how and when should I engage with a bookkeeper or an accountant? If you're remotely even thinking about working with somebody, chances are you need the help. And it's a matter of what's really in your way of holding you back from the commitment. Now, money is usually never the problem. It's more of what's really going inside for us to commit to what's happening. Now, cost, of course, right, should be a factor because I'm a tax professional and we need to spend within our means. However, this area, what's something to think about is that it's supposed to guide us and it's to lead you to where you want to go, but it may not be where you are now. So, when should you engage with it? When you feel like you need the support. And in general, honestly, all businesses need help in some capacity or form. I also have a comprehensive video around building a resilient tax team, if that interests you, where it goes into what a bookkeeper does, what an accountant does, and you can understand it for your business. And I would love to share that with you for whoever is interested. Another great question is how do I work with a bookkeeper and still protect myself from theft and fraud? So what we've done inside HCT is that any access that we get, it's called view access only. So what does that mean? We don't have access to your money because the money is yours as the business owner. If you're giving access to money to somebody that is in your accounting team, that is your responsibility because what's happening is that you're basically electing and signing up for that option. Now, there's no reason why any accountant or any tax professional needs to have access outside of view only. Now, you could hand them the information where they don't have to go online to the bank account. They could not have to go into your Amex statement. However, the gap there is going to be that you're going to need to supply that information to them. Now, there is an app add-on that will basically start to gather the information from the apps and it could deliver that. However, at some point, you will need to log in to really make sure that the systems are aligning. Now, a lot of clients at a point they use that as an entry point to not do the work because they're like of the how and all of these things. But what it really means is chances are you're not logging into your own bank account. You're not actually opening up your statements and doing that little part yourself. Because when you do it yourself, you realize that it has an importance to it. And if you're not doing it, that's what's creating the need with somebody else to do it. Another great question is how do I work with, oh wait, that was the same question. Okay. Might or should my bookkeeper be in the same state as I am? It doesn't matter because a bookkeeper is basically somebody who's just posting transactions and helping you categorize them. Where the state matters is if you're doing tax planning, which is a way to look at your money almost like 100 foot view of your money and saying, okay, What is happening now? What do we want to happen? All of our different buckets, what's missing, and let's plan from there. So understanding per state the tax laws is really, really important. Or if you happen to have sales tax. Now, payroll, it really also doesn't matter because what happens is that the programs, let's say like ATP or whatever program that you choose, possibly QuickBooks, it's already set up with the state. However, we need to set the program straight of the state that it's in. So people get a lot of fudged up feelings around setting it up. This is where a professional can actually do it for you. What's going to happen if you have, let's say, like ATP or QuickBooks do it, they're going to say, check in with your tax professional because this is what we do, and you're trying to take a task that doesn't is not necessarily in your genius zone or your area of expertise. The next great question was around working virtually. My office happens to work only remotely. Now, I always tell clients at this point, I'm personally more valuable in the remote concept because I show up with a lot more value in terms of our reports, interacting, working, solving your problem, a Zoom session where we get to dive in and do the work together. Sitting in somebody's office is basically like similar like when you're talking to a friend and you're like, hey friend, let's go for coffee. Hey friend, let's go to Starbucks. Or hey friend, let's go to Bloomingdale's. What you really want is a meeting that's worth your time and going to solve your problem. So the virtual in the sense is that it's almost like your way of protection too, because once we close the Zoom screen, that's it. You get to do whatever you want and you can run things however you want. And the idea of the virtual, you're not in complete control, but this is not where control is really necessary. Control is necessary amount of, are we taking care of what we need? What cost should I expect to incur working with a bookkeeper? Another great question. We need to pay for the softwares. The other day, we onboarded a client and she was actually surprised by the fact that she had to pay for the monthly software for the app for QuickBooks. And she was coming from a program where the accounting firm had the desktop version. So now when you have the desktop version of QuickBooks, what happens is that you could have multiple files and you technically are saving money for your clients as a tax professional, so that they don't have to have it. But what happens is also as a tax professional, we now own the information. We now have to upkeep the information and there's all sorts of updates, not representing this as an issue, but you want to own it. And when you own it, now let's say like in the cloud or in like the online version, what happens is there, it's a username and password. It's secure in the server. And what happens is that all of the updates are there. When you have the desktop, yes. What happens is with the desktop is that there is different things that you might need there versus the online. However, there's plenty of options in the online that chances are you're going to be fine. And it could be you don't have to pay. And a lot of people get caught up in this. It's not the place to save, is what I'm going to say. So the costs are for monthly bookkeeping. You also have a tax return. And then chances are if you have tax planning. Now, the other thing is that around your entity, so let's say you have an S corp, so you have the entity elections of those types of costs, and pretty much that's it. People categorize the cost of running tax into the category of also like when you have to pay payroll tax and sales tax or like income tax and these things that's on you and what you own. But a professional, what it basically is for monthly bookkeeping, and you can have an attached to bookkeeping. Let's say like in my company, people would pay more than just bookkeeping if they want my CFO services and they want tax advisory, so that we're working more together in like a coaching manner, so that I get to advise you to grow, to scale the business, watching profits and tax, but also scale in a way that's helping you make more money. Now, in real estate, what's really, really cool about this when we have different entities is that there's the same concepts repeat in the entities that you're opening, But what happens is also when you have a lot of entities, it requires a lot of bookkeeping at the same time. So if you're not in a do it for you, you're going to have bookkeeping costs per entity because at the end of the day, they are separate businesses. So to each his own. Now, we happen to have made, which is important to share, a video training, a comprehensive 8-minute training on the tax prep process. Now, tax prep in the industry is built as a reactive way to look at your numbers on the tax process. However, what I've done was is take that process into this 8-minute training on Excel. So you already have the boundaries and what you're supposed to do in this training on Excel, and basically you can use it year after year. As I highly promote the do it for you services, this is a way that might solve the problem of where you are so that we have a good way to get an accurate tax return at the end of the year. Okay. As a landlord, what financial reports should you be reviewing? Great question. As a landlord, I'm a landlord, and I can tell you it's a rough spot, and I don't like it. However, what should you be looking at? It's basically is your income coming on time and how much the cost, it's similar to any business of what it's actually costing you. So if you have like 10 properties, what we really want to do is to have financial statements per building or per unit, because if there's a lot of repairs, what it's costing. So we can have financial reports per unit, per entity. There's a lot of different ways to do it. It's a matter of the depth and the complication of what your business is at. So what I would say is what's important to you is what we're going to look at, and then the financial system will build around that. There's no one size fits all to this. Every landlord that I've worked with, I have to say, it has worked in all of different ways, specifically because no two things are the same, and what's important to one is not important to the other. For instance, I have some landlords just getting their monthly rent is important. I have some landlords, the fact that the tenants violate the lease is more important than them paying on time because it's costing them more in different ways than just the monthly rent. So it really has to be around building and adapting this system around your culture and values to how we want to build this, which actually goes back into how and when you engage someone, you also want to choose someone who aligns with your values on what you're thinking and how you're building your business. So it's all going to come align and bring together. Okay. Weekly, monthly, quarterly. Okay. So then the other question was how often? Look at them how often you like, but at minimum weekly. I have some people who look at them daily. I have some people who look at them quarterly. Some people care less around the numbers. It's more of like that the operation is just running. So find a system to look at these reports as often as you feel is going to reduce your nervous system from bugging the dang out if something happens around the money. However, what I'm going to say to loop this together is like this. If you have a good engine, and it's working for you, there's less focus on how many times you need to log in because the system of the overall component that's leading into the monthly, like the daily, the weekly, that's leading into the monthly, will become less important because chances are you're making the profit, or if we're getting away with the profit so you can make the loss on the tax returns. There's so many different ways that I can turn this that again, it goes back into what's really, really important to you to build the engine. And as this concludes the questions, what I would say is that I encourage you to meet yourself where you're at the first step. And whatever that first step is important to you, I would say is let's work on that and let's make that your next best thing so that you can make more profit, make more money, keep the money that you make, and not give it to the government. Now, for all of you here that are giving it to the government, what I'll say is that, amen. Let's stop that behavior and realize that the tax law is here for a reason and you get to have it all. And I'm going to close with a story actually. So when I started off in Marco's bookkeeping, uh, I was obviously just a bookkeeper then. I had way more knowledge, but I wasn't really utilizing it. And I was learning in this big tax firm. And then one day, when things were really growing and I was seeing how much money I owed. I was like, oh my God, something had to change. And when I looked into the process, I was set up as an LLC, so I was paying self-employment tax, and it was not set up, conducive for me to afford to keep working in that way. And the question was why? I was married at the time, and when you have combined income, there's a way when you have a marital, when you're filing joint, how there's like another layer to that. So when I understood about my self-employment tax, along with the balance that I owed, right? I was like, oh gosh, like there's gotta be a better way. And when I got the answer around tax planning, I was really tripped up around the cost of the tax planning. Now, when the actual bill came, that it was like stamped official that I had to pay it, I was like, oh, dang it. I went back to that invoice and I went back to the person because obviously the link expired. And I was like, hey, I want to pay you. I want that process. And that process between the balance and whatever and the planning, what I owed, it was like $12,000, and it was like the $12,000 of my gateway to understanding that that's where I advanced my tax professional guidance on leading myself and now leading hundreds upon thousands of clients across the years, time and space in this. And I can say as an individual, I'm basically tax free how I can lead my life. And it's led me to new waves. And I say this not to pat on myself on the back, is to show you is that when we use the tax law as our friend, it can do the same for you with doing less and gaining more. So that $12,000 basically was my expense, my debt, or my wake up call to building my practice, which is basically developed to this and bringing business tax all together so that you can have it all, be tax free, bring the money in your pocket and use the money for everything else. So if I saved you that $12,000, what can you do with that? So thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little video. Any questions, as always, let me know. And thank you for the opportunity to share this information. Talk soon.